Well, good night, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be here with you on Advancing the Cause. And tonight we are going to be having a very deep discussion. But first, let me say happy birthday to all of those wonderful viewers who would have celebrated birthdays during this week. Starting last Wednesday to this Wednesday. Happy birthday to you. May you be blessed with long life, an additional portion of tolerance, wisdom, love, and care. Happy birthday to you. Those who were celebrating 95th birthday, 80th birthday, 65th birthday, 60th birthday, and all the birthdays. Happy birthday to you. And of course, we have to, on this program, we usually extend our condolences to those who have lost loved ones. And at this time, I personally would want to, on behalf of the Advancing the Cause team, to extend our deepest condolences to the Williamses family. We've lost Miss Yvette Williams just this week, former head teacher. The last school she was at, North Georgetown Primary School. What a wonderful soul. And we pray that God will grant the family members the comfort they need at this time. You know, Guyana is losing every day. And that woman, I can tell you, that woman was a woman of substance. She did her contributions to education and the upliftment of students, and her spiritual contribution as well. It's beyond par. Your loss is our loss. And we are going to continue to lift you up in our prayers. And so this evening we're talking about taking a closer look at education in Guyana. And, you know, usually we have our highlights for the evening, but we're not going to have the highlights this evening because I have two very dynamic young men who are going to be joining the stage with me, and we have a lot to share with you. And so, operator, could you bring with us, or before we bring them on, let me say to you viewers, call up your neighbors, call up your friends, just let them know that Advancing the Cause is on, and so they need to be tuned in at this time. Call your friends, tell them we're taking a closer look at education. So operator, just could you bring our guests on, and then we are going to have a little picture of a young lady who is manning the education system at this time. Find somewhere to put her. So our guests this evening, first we have Apostle Nigel London. Apostle, it's always a privilege to have you being engaged in conversations of these sorts. And as a teacher, as a former teacher, I wish to say to our viewers, once a teacher, always a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. So when issues in education are not going right, I know how that would trigger a whole lot of spines and nails and all kinds of things in your head. So I'm happy to have you here. And then we have another teacher with us. Once a teacher, always a teacher, Mr. Paul Court. Happy to have you here with us. Music, I don't know how to describe this young man, you know. When you talk about music, you talk about Paul Court. But the funny thing is, we have allowed politics to get involved in education. And so Paul has been politicized, if I can say that. And rather than giving back to Guyana, Paul is somewhere else giving what we really want to have here. But don't worry, we'll get more into that. So Nigel and Paul, welcome to Advancing the Cause. And let's take this really closer look at education. Nigel, I'll start off first with you, talking about your days at school, and then we're going to take a little bit from Paul, and then we're going to talk about what's happening now.
Greetings to you, and greetings to, of course, Mr. Court. It is a pleasure to be here with you, as always. Whenever I see the word education or anything having to do with the interest therein, I am always prepared to lend my voice to it if it's so desired. And I must compliment you for the consistency with which you have driven this engine called education for the betterment of it. My recollection of education is unique, and in many regards, because when I the first memory I have of being educated or enrolled in a school was what was called Tukude School, now Tukude Primary School, and it was a school for a private institution to some extent because it was mainly for managers and senior supervisors' children. So I was in the 1970s in a school with wall-to-wall carpeting and central air conditioning. We had a movie theater. We had all kinds of stuff in the school. And that really formed and fashioned a very, very significant and impressionable idea in my head about what education is supposed to be like or the environment thereof. Then I was fortunate to be enrolled in the New Amsterdam Multilateral School. And that too caused me to have a very good, based on Forrest Burnham's vision, an excellent experience regarding education. But I want to share with you that before I got to New Amsterdam Multilateral School, something happened. There was a school in New Amsterdam called All Saints Primary School. Now imagine my leaving with Tukude School, where we had wall-to-wall carpeting, we had central air conditioning, we had movie theaters, we had all that. And then my father was transferred in the bauxite industry, so I went to Berbice, New Amsterdam, and then I was enrolled in this school called All Saints Primary School. Coretta, I was horrified on the first day. I couldn't imagine that actually was a school in the country, in Guyana. I didn't see any wall-to-wall carpets. I didn't see any air conditioning. I saw one big hall and everybody sat inside. And as a child, and I'm saying this for a reason, I was shocked to know that this is what I was supposed to be involved in, because this didn't match what I left. And I normally then think about what it's like in reference to our children's experiences. What do they really think of themselves when they enter certain environments, if they leave a home of a certain standard, and then they go to what is called schools now? And we talk about that, I'm sure.
But what I wanted you to talk about, Nigel, and I think we'll talk about it a little more in the conversation. I wanted you to talk about your experience as a teacher as well.
Well,
But
as a
Paul,
teacher, I thought you said student. Oh, sorry, I was thinking as a student.
that's fine. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Paul, could we hear some of some of your experiences as a pupil, then as a student in secondary and at the tertiary level?
All right. Let me say that I had a really, really good early childhood experience because starting at nursery school, I'll never forget, I started at Mary Kids Nursery School, which no longer exists. It used to be on Dennis Street in Campbellville. And then because I moved to Kitty proper, went to Wendy's Nursery School, which also no longer exists. Wendy's Nursery School used to be downstairs at what used to be St. Thomas More Hostel, which belongs to the Catholics. I think it was recently resuscitated and now it's a retirement home on Lamaha Street, Kitty. Well, downstairs there was Mary Kids Nursery School. And we had teachers who really loved what they did. I remember never forget teacher Iril Holder, who used to live in Bar Street, Kitty. She was the principal of the school. And she used to do really nice things for the children, including making fruit salads and all kinds of stuff and, making you really happy. So I enjoyed that. And then I went to, F.E. Pollard Primary School, where we had, one of the first Amerindians to become principal of a school. Her name was Elsa Cad, and she was from the Rupununi. And she was also a very sweet and kind lady, never spoke above a hush. And we used to always wonder how this little Amerindian lady would command a whole school without a microphone, right? But she was very soft spoken, but very powerful. I'll never forget that she wasn't the kind to even wield a cane, but she had control. She never used to beat or anything like that. I mean, the only time I ever saw her give lashes was when the school patrols happened to be fighting on the street, and she considered that an embarrassment to the school. So, she beat them right in front of the whole school. It was the first time I ever saw Miss Cat ever hit anybody. But she was always very loving. And then we had a stalwart like Ruth Persico, the sister of Jean Persico, former union person like you. Then junior minister of education, a member of parliament, and all the rest of it. And so I had good, strong principles in my formative years because I'll never forget when we had common entrance to do. Ruth Persico put the fourth standard teachers to sit down, and she took over the common entrance class. I mean, those were the days when you got common entrance and it's the headmaster, headmistress teaching the class. That's the master teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going off to secondary school at Brickdam Secondary School. Um, and when I was done, I ended up teaching at Bishop's High School as my first teaching assignment. And I spent a very short time at Bishop's High School and then ended up at QC. I started to teach in 96. Went over to QC in 97 and, uh, and started working there. Now, the fact of the matter is that back then, things were very different. Our teacher's word was law. That's the very first thing. Um, that there was a lot more control. And I learned that very early from Maureen Messiah, who was fondly called the ninja at the time when she was teaching at
Yeah,
Bishop.
Bishops.
Um, Ninja, the very first day I went to school, she said to me, Mr. Court, the first thing I've got to tell you is that you must maintain control of your classes. If you do not maintain control, you quickly lose everything. So the first order of business is classroom management, right? You teach, you impart skills, knowledge, and attitudes. And if you don't take care of number three, number one and number two go through the window, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that very early. And so I was a stickler for discipline. I mean, you ask anybody I taught at Queen's College, I was feared. I mean, in hindsight, I tell myself that I didn't need to be as tough as I was, but then sometimes I say, you know what, the reason why I got my work done with very little difficulty is because I was tough. Nobody ever crossed me. So there's no time for foolishness or for play. I got my work done. And so that was my experience. And, I also taught in an environment where the teacher had the support of the principal. And therefore, you know, unless you were, egregiously wrong, you knew that if a matter had to go to the principal, you had a leg to stand on. So that was one of the very reassuring things. Of course, students back then thought that I was a holy terror. As a matter of fact, I was talking to somebody recently, I mean, like a month ago, who told me that a former student who will remain nameless because everybody would know who he is in Guyana told him Cort was the executioner. I said, well, if he means that I was the one wielding the cane, then he was right. He said, yeah, that man was serious. So I was that teacher. And I enjoyed my time when I was teaching. Went off to study and then got to realize, because I studied in the US, that, that was a completely different world. And by the time I had graduated and come back, with the mass exodus of teachers and things like those, I realized that education was slipping because the persons who held the institution together, they were the glue, the connective tissue, were the ones who were disappearing very fast. All the very experienced ones, the heads of department, people who had postgraduate qualifications were the ones who started to leave, in mid to late 1990s and into 2000s. So that when I came back to Queen's College in 2005, of a register of 57 or 58 full-time teachers, I could only recognize about 8 names. I couldn't believe that in 5 years, there was that kind of turnover. And, when I was coming back, I asked a colleague, I said, listen, how many persons have left? And that person said to me, you better ask how many have remained. So that is when I realized that we were in trouble. And after then, there was this slide, not just in personnel, but then the disciplinary standards started to slip. And that is when I appreciated the idea that the institution is not the building, but the people who make it work. That is when I realized that, the discipline went down, not uh, because of any infrastructure or anything, but because the people who used to be there insisting on standards and holding the whole school together were no longer around.
So Paul, I'm sure the viewers want to hear a little bit more about your take on what's happening now in education. And so we're going to start off by talking, having this little talk on readiness, school readiness. I know Nigel would have been there in the fields and even before the reopening of schools. And we saw after 2 months and more than 2 months, we saw some schools. One school I'm gonna highlight first is Bamia, the school that is supposed to be built at Bamia. Nigel, if you'll be able to tell us some of what is happening there. I don't know if the operator has the photographs to show us. There we saw big monies playing out. And let me say to our viewers that we're going to be very frank here tonight. Where a contractor or persons who claim to be in a contracting form, they were offered big monies to build a school, which would take off some of the load from somewhere. Nigel, could you tell us what is happening there? Yes, we have on the screen there the contractor.
Yes, and I was among those who, at the onset, said that this is a disaster waiting to happen, because 347 million Ghana dollars would have been earmarked for this Bamia Primary School, and it was placed in the hands of Straight Construction Incorporated, the construction company. This person is known as a popular DJ, and overnight he became known as one who's qualified to build a school of that magnitude, one of the largest schools in Region 10. And I said it would not happen. It is impossible for them to do this. I remember there are those who hopped on the train and said that they're going to be offering the services and they'll be supervising and they'll be assisting. And here we are. When I checked in the school, I was supposed to go there today, but of course time didn't permit me to do so, to show everyone live what is there, because this school was supposed to be finished in July of 2023. We are in September, approaching the end of the month, and the school doesn't even have a roof on it. It doesn't even have a coat of paint on it. It has absolutely nothing in reference to preparation for electrical infrastructure, fittings, plumbing, and so on. Nothing in this school that can even make a dog reside in it or sit in it. And that's what we're dealing with here in reference to readiness. So we still have a case in which our children are displaced. Amelia's Ward Primary School, as I speak to you, which is supposed to be, some of the students will be filtered into the Bamia Primary School. They are in an environment where work is being done just because this school isn't finished. So the Amelia's Ward Primary School students are on a split or shift system, and the students are being taught while construction work is ongoing, because Bamia Primary School is not remotely close to being completed. And this man had the nerve to say that they'll be finished with this school within a few or 2 months. How? I own a construction company, and I can tell you that this is impossible. Not difficult. It will not happen. And
Nigel,
catastrophic.
Sorry, Nigel, persons have been saying, and we've been complaining all along about these contracts that are being awarded. You don't see persons coming to do any survey. What you see happening is persons coming to turn the sod. The minister, of course, fancy girl and so always there and so. By the way, let me say to our viewers, she claims that I am obsessed with her. Nigel, I don't know if you could break that down for me and tell me what I mean, because I really know, why I would be obsessed with her. What I do is highlight the nonsense that she's doing. That's what I do.
Correct.
And so I don't know how I could be obsessed with this young lady, but she says I'm obsessed with her. I understand the plight she finds herself in, because maybe if we check, we might very well find her name at that university in IFLOD there. So she doesn't understand a lot of things. But this is Linden, this is Region 10. And we've seen from we saw it before 2015, but we've seen as of 2020, August 2nd, the return of the PPP. And we're seeing Linden, Region 10, as being a place where, or a region where the citizens, like the boys would say, they're getting payback for what they didn't do. Your take on that with regards to education?
It seems to be the case, because if we're going to focus on that, that's what I do. I focus on how prepared our institutions are for learners and for teachers, and who are the ones that are vested with the responsibility to ensure that the environment itself, the learning environment, is fitting for our students and our teachers. And what's obvious is that the individuals who are given contracts, I call them cutbacks or paybacks, not contracts, and they're being made to have responsibility for construction, for maintenance, for repairs, and they are not even remotely close to being qualified to doing these things. And what I would like to think, or I would have hoped would have happened, is that they would be those of us who would have served in education at various capacities. My role would have been as an education supervisor with the SSRP to monitor school labs in construction. So I know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was my job to do so. So whenever I'm here about schools being built and so on, and I'm saying, okay, who's the contractor? I asked the question even the other day to Tukade Primary School, who is the contractor? What did they do, as you're speaking to, prior to coming here to do anything? How well did they investigate the issues that are being faced, and what are they going to do about it? Because there's certain critical questions to be asked. But when I notice who are being given contracts, I realize that you have to be dressed in a red shirt or red t-shirt, red hat, black pants, and you have to demonstrate now publicly that you are loyal to the PPP. It's no longer about what you qualify to do, it's about to whom you're loyal. And once an individual has to have political loyalty in order to be afforded the right or the opportunity to embark on a project like building a school or repairing a school or some aspect of infrastructure work, we are already in crisis mode. Because this is where individuals in Region 10, I know for sure, have to commit themselves to supporting the PPP Civic, or they shall not receive an opportunity to have these contracts. But at the end of the day, my argument still remains that if they're qualified to do what they're doing, and if they're capable of doing what they're doing, then let them do it. Because there's another argument. But they're not even qualified to do it. So they're getting cutbacks. Okay, since you supported us and you stood up and you got a problem, take this contract to do this. You go and build this one. You go do that one. And they're sharing things out as though it is their money, and they're sharing it with their children. Because as they said, everybody has to eat. And they're now eating at our expense.
Well, Nigel, I just saw some comments from our viewers there, and a viewer was saying that it's just the PPP just sharing out taxpayers' money. And in some instances, it's payback for some of their friends, like you just said. But the big thing is, when we're constructing these schools, and I know Paul is going to come in at this point, when we're constructing our schools, I am not sure what do we do in terms of walkabout, in terms of consulting with the residents or the citizens whose children are going to be the persons, the ones benefiting from those schools. Do we ever consider the area, whether it's windy or not? And now, especially with the heat that we're having, how we are going to build, whether we are going to put lots of windows, whether we are going to put lots of fans, whether we are going to put air conditioning units. Is there ever any talk on that?
No, there is. And Paul, please, if I can, because this is, sorry, Paul, but Barmy Primary School is a perfect example where you're building a concrete structure with no air conditioning. And Ali today spoke about global warming and the crisis that we face and that Guyana is suffering immensely, but yet one of the newest schools, a superstructure, has nothing in reference to air conditioning and proper ventilation, not even extractor fans. So we have all these concrete structures being built to put our children in, and I call them little ovens. I could tell you
We'll
this.
say what we want, yeah.
Even if we go to our children or to the communities and ask them, what do you want? That doesn't solve the problem. We have to have people who specialize in these projects and they know exactly what is required based on the environment, as you said, based on certain factors that we know can directly influence the health and well-being of a child. So maybe say this quickly, please. Some structures were built in areas where it's wet, and that happened at Tukade Primary School and with Tukade Nursery School. Guess what's happening? There's mold infestation because somebody wasn't smart enough to know that if you're building in a swamp, you have to at least protect the foundation. And mold is dangerous to our children's well-being. Parents didn't know that. The principal told me she doesn't understand why the child are just losing concentration. That's a sign of exposure to mold. Children cannot settle in the classroom. That's a sign of exposure to mold. Children have serious respiratory issues, many with asthmatic conditions. They always get flu-like symptoms. They feel sick. The teachers feel sick. They feel tired. Those are all signs that you've been exposed to mold. And what you know what to do? They paint the wall and wipe it off and say you're ready to go back. Put what do you call the thing? The paper, the cardboard. Put it over the wall and put the teaching it up there.
Paul, your take on this part where we're having, before Paul come in, Paul, you're familiar with the quarantine. I visited low quarantine secondary school, and I saw in classrooms, of course, we still have big auditoriums and so on, and you have screens dividing these classrooms. And I was amazed that in 2023, when we hear so much talk about Guyana being the Dubai of the Caribbean and the country with the fastest growing economy, you know, I saw there table tennis, 2 halves of a table tennis table being used for screens. I saw zinc sheets, the plain zinc sheets, and they were nailed on wood and that's screens. Tell us about your thoughts on these with regards to moving the education sector.
Well, I have always had difficulty with classrooms that were not properly demarcated. And the reason is very simple. I'm a singer. My voice is important to me. And when you don't have walls that separate the classrooms, the noise pollution from one class to the next often puts the teacher in the place where they have to speak so loudly to be heard that quite often they complain of hoarseness, the throat always sore. And the fact of the matter is that because of the noise from the class next door, the children are distracted because they're hearing what their teacher is saying as loudly as they're hearing what the teacher next door is saying because they're just divided by a chalkboard sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how are they supposed to focus when there's noise from the children in the class next door, noise from the teacher in the class next door, while their teacher is trying to shout at them, and there's the noise that is made from their own classroom, not to mention classrooms that are further from the one just next door. There's noise on both sides, and plus the noise of the street, all right, plus the noise that was happening in the yard. So I don't know how, in God's name, we still have schools that don't have walled classrooms to control filtering out noise pollution. That's one. And then the other thing that bothers me is that children in Guyana are very bookish, right? Their education is really lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're doing academics. And my question is, when do they play, right? How do they play? Where do they play? And the way we build schools now, I mean, all they get is an academically driven education without any of the soft skills, the fine skills, the aesthetics. And it's one of the reasons, in spite of how great we feel about Guyana's academic performance, and it is outstanding, I know, but I was happy that my children had their primary school foundation in Trinidad. And the reason is very simple. They have a very, very balanced program. And your child doesn't have the opportunity to get bored with school because the school day is punctuated by activity, right? You have music in between classes, and that is apart from pan, steel pan, because Trinidad made it their policy to have pan in the classroom because that's their national instrument. So they do some music, they do some pan, then they have PE, and there are some schools that have made arrangements with private entities where in the middle of the school day, a bus picks the children up and carry them to some site off the campus to play some tennis, in the middle of the day. So they don't have book whole day, right? They get to go off, play, come back, right? Those who don't do tennis do football. Those who don't do football do karate. So when we don't see them with a million subjects, we feel good. Guyana got all these 20 how many subjects, but how rounded are those students? Right? And so, it goes back to the way the buildings are being built. Are we building facilities that have a badminton court inside or a table tennis court? Do they have a music room? Do they have a gymnasium, where the students could play indoor sports? Nothing, no forward planning. It's only square walls, like basically like a pen, like a barn, where you let the animals in. You drill them whole day, the brain working, nothing else. And then when you're done, the parents come and pick them up. The point is that we have to make rounded human beings who learn, who have skills that are not academic, social skills. They learn artistic skills, etc., so that we learn to develop the whole human being through the arts and sports. They learn healthy competition. They learn to get a good image of themselves when they get to be confident of doing something. So we're teaching them self-realization, a sense of pride. You're developing their emotional side. You're developing their team spirit, etc., etc. And those are things that you don't get by just doing book. So I'm really, really concerned about the direction of education. I mean, when you have 23 subjects, I know how these things go. I taught at Queen's College. Some children start lessons at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have a friend in particular who backs their car out of their garage at 5:30 in the morning because the class starting at 6. And some lessons going till 9 and 10 in the night. So that these children come out of school, they have all these subjects, and I don't know how functional they are as human beings, because their physical development is hampered because all they do is sit in school all day. They don't go and run and develop some muscles. They don't go out on the field and scream a little bit to get out some frustration when they play sport, etc. So, there are several things that are wrong with the way we are doing things. And unfortunately, we are the voices in the wilderness because, somebody is going to say, we can't even commend the good things that we see happening. We're according to the word of the lady, we're obsessed.
But I want to have Nigel come in here because I remember Nigel at college, and I'm stepping off of the regular school here. I remember at college we had a place for what we call assembly, our assembly point where we assembled and we raised the flag and we sang the national anthem and the principal addressed us. But in our schools today, do we have that parking lot there where our children can stand when it's assembly time, Nigel?
No, we don't. I have seen in many schools, even ones that are being recently built, they're not having any provision for that. They're not making provision for that. Children have to stand in the yard. I see one where the teachers will stand in the upper level, I think BEI, Bobby's Education Institute, and the students have to stand on the ground in the sun at this time, in the dust and everything else. You stand outside at Tukude School. The children stand in the yard, in the sand. The teacher, the principal who addressed them will stand on it and just talk to them. So they don't even have that sense. Doesn't speak into my experience. There's a sense that you have as a child about the quality of environment you find yourself in and how much you are worth based on that. So we don't have that because the people who are constructing or designing schools now, for some odd reason, do not seem to even think that that's important. In college, we had the parking lot. In Mackenzie High School, we had an auditorium, and we also have a parking lot. In the newest, in Multi, you have parking lots and auditoriums. But nowadays, you have stand outside, and we talk to you. So even something as simple as you've said it, to have a flag in a school compound, I don't know the last day I saw that in an average school. When we thought about national symbols, and the flag being one of them, I don't see it at the school. It's painted on a wall, a drawing on a wall and it's on a piece of paper.
And you know what? I'm sure you're going to agree with me, and our viewers are going to agree with me when I say that our education sector or the education system in Guyana is really, really, really taking a nosedive. Regardless of the 27 subjects and Guyana topping at CSEC, we're really not going anywhere. When we look at what is happening in our school systems, we don't have anywhere for the children to play in the schoolyard. Nowhere. Back then, we knew that we had Bible club and we had Friday afternoon off. They have day off for you to go and play whatever games you want, whether you wanted to play indoor games or you wanted to be outside. We don't have that happening in our schools. I remember when we were going to school back then, we had music. We did literature and we did poetry and so on. But it's not happening like that in our schools now. And so when we look, it's from one thing to another. Operator, I think we need to bring Mr. Court on. I think he's something there, but we can bring him on. Yes, it's moving from we're at this level and we just keep diving down all the time. Now, we have the issue of, we talked about the buildings. And I want to say good night to our friend there, out front parts, and the Honorable Nima Flew Bess. And I'm hearing St. Joseph's ringing out, substandard work. And you don't ever hear about these contractors being debarred. You don't ever hear that.
Right.
You don't ever hear them having to repay monies for work that they did not do. What we found out is that after August 2nd, 2020, we saw some contracts being pulled from some contractors who had them, and people who all they know about doing is holding a mic and jumping up. All these people getting contracts,
right?
When they simply don't know anything about construction. Operator, I noticed you had the photographs there of Bamia, and I want our viewers to see where that school is at, and you tell us. If you think that the 2 months period that the contract is talking about that the school is going to be finished, then you tell us if that's correct. Nigel, maybe you can comment on if the images we are having here, if these are the same images, and or whether we have gone up a little, because I know there are some workers there who have been sending me messages and they're complaining bitterly that they're asking them to work way out in the nights because they want to push and push and push. Now, when
Right.
you're putting persons under pressure, all of us know what will happen.
Well, those images that are on the screen are from what I've gathered a few months back. They have the walls up now, in many of the classrooms, but there's no roof, and the basic signs that the building would be ready within 2 months. Because if you have a school of that size, you have to create, for repetition in reference to repeatability in reference to what you have to do. So wiring and so on, plumbing. There's a lot to be done. The school doesn't have a roof on it. The basic things that are required for us to even say that it can be ready in 2 months are absent. The danger is that if you're going to try now to finish this within 2 months, there's going to be compromise in reference to the quality of work being done. And if you have a workforce, it is abnormal for Guyanese to work late at nights in construction work. I said I do it, so I know I'm talking about it. When 5 o'clock, the men want to go home. So if you want to drive them into 12 o'clock or midnight and you don't pay them adequately, they'll give you substandard work. Secondly, who's supervising this? I haven't heard of no entity that is external and independent that says, okay, we're going to come on site and they're going to inspect the work in a phase-by-phase basis for this to be done. And so it's not happening. And I'm glad that you spoke to the plummet of education reference to the country, because Forbes Burnham, and they say I'm PNC, say whatever you want. I really don't care what people say, as a matter of fact, because they can't prove me wrong. Lyndon Forbes Sanson Burnham had the best education plan for this country ever. No one has ever matched it. And no one shall in the near future, because their mind is not on developing students. Their mind is on giving their friends contracts. Their mind is on saying that we built a stadium, for example, and that's how stupid it is. You build stadia across the country, but the schools don't have proper playgrounds. So what would be the feeder system for these places? How can you host international athletes here and you don't even have a basic playground for the average child? When I was in school, we had a school ground. Berbice High School had a ground for itself. BEI had a ground. You have some multilateral school had its own ground. Mackenzie High School had a ground. Nowadays, you have a little quadrangle in the middle of the school, and the students, you can't bring the whole school out there to play because it won't happen. I share this one with you, which I consider to be most disastrous. With Tukade Primary School, for example, and I kid you not, there is absolutely nowhere for the children to play safely. Nowhere. There's a plot of land opposite the school. I said to them years ago, why don't you take this plot of land, fence it, and have the children play there? You know what I was told? That is for some project where they'll have a park of some sort or something. And the students from the school must walk about 200 or so meters down the road where these big bush trucks are traveling to go play there, because somebody else wants to develop the ground right where the school is. That's what you're doing with reference to this government, this administration. They don't have vision for the small man. They have no vision for education. What they have is the means of saying we have 25, 27, 28 subjects, but dysfunctional individual school students. And maybe that's what they want.
We're in a sad state. Paul, I want you to talk a little about what is happening, because I know you're up to date with what is happening in our school system, and I'd be happy for you to share with our viewers what is happening with regards to. We've spoken about the school buildings, but just recently we had a dorms fire which claimed the lives of 20 students, 19 students and a pupil. 20 innocent lives were just gone like that. Could you tell us, from your experience teaching overseas, what are the systems in place for security in our schools?
Well, in the first place, you would never ever have at a boarding school windows that are grilled and children have no escape if there is a disaster. That's the very, very first thing that I've never seen anywhere where you have children. You know, that is something that is inexcusable and should never have happened. Um, in my experience, if it is that you have children who are errant, they go about their own business, they skip and get away and go do whatever they got to do, then the thing you do is you hire more personnel to supervise them. You don't grill the building to lock them in. It's a safety hazard. It's beyond me to think that somebody would have signed off on grilling a school and to have children locked in. I don't know what sort of dummy would ever come up with an idea like that. I mean, young people trying to find a way around the system is not new. Right? Everybody tries to test the system and get around whatever rules exist. Now, but I don't know how people are not in jail for doing that, but then the so-called or the alleged perpetrator, a minor,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is locked up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Put in jail, which should not happen in the first place, um, because of the foolish decisions of policymakers. You lock up the child when it's whoever decided to order the grill work on the school or to lock them in to go out to party who should be in jail. I don't know. I feel as if we're in some sort of a twilight zone because nowhere else in the world have I ever seen that happen.
It's disgusting. It's very, very disgusting. But I'm hoping that with that experience, we're not ever going to have a repeat. And I'm hoping that the contractors who are building schools now, that they have very clearly defined or labeled fire escapes. They have fire extinguishers in schools, and they have sand pots there or sand buckets. And one of the things we find happening in our schools is that, like you said earlier, Paul, we concentrate on the academic part of it. I remember at school, and Nigel, you would remember this too, we had fire drill. Fire drill is a thing of the past now. So we don't have these kinds of things happening in our schools. And so as soon as something happens, you have the children running helter-skelter, everybody running all over the place. And these are the things that we should have. The young lady who's manning the education ministry, these are the things that are supposed to be discussed with her officers rather than cussing out everybody who criticizes her on something, rather than implementing policies and looking at revising policies and so on. Her best mode of operation is to cuss everybody, and she talks about who doesn't like us and who always criticizing and who's politically driven, and a whole lot of foolishness you get from this young lady, the Honorable Priya Manik Chan. Yes, Nigel, you can come in if you want here.
Sure, I do recall, and that's why I speak to Burnham so much, and people say that he had a great influence on me. He has, because he had sense. When I went to Amsterdam Multilateral School and even CPC, especially the multilateral schools, on every floor there was a fire hose, not an extinguisher, the hose and an alarm. If it rings, that's where, or you had to assemble and pull the hose along the corridor. It could extend either way. Burnham did that without oil money. We had the hoses on every level. So if there's a fire, you had a hose, like the firemen, a little smaller that we can handle as students. You had the alarm. What you have now in the schools, absolutely nothing. Because the focus, again, is not on the quality of the children's lives. The focus is on who can get a contract here and there, and who can boast about having more subjects than the other, and who can say that they have proper teaching aids in the classroom that some supervisor likes. Forgetting that there's certain nuances that are so critical. Little things are so important to our children's well-being. And so when we look at the environment of the school and how they're constructed, they're not built with safety in mind. We have schools that are constructed now. I have photographs to show you. I think it was just on the screen, where you have in the grade 3 level, metal as the ceiling, painted black in a concrete building, and our children are sitting in there. You've got exposed wiring at the grade 2 building. In Wisberg Secondary School as well. You've got, in all this, just about schools in Linden, exposed wires. Exposed wires. I reported this to the CEO because apparently the REO in Linden doesn't care about schools. I said, if it rains, and it did happen, and the rain blows in a southeasterly direction, it will wet the circuit. The whole circuit panel is exposed on the outside. It happened, and it began to spark and so on in the building. And then they said that it's because of the number of fans. Look at our school system in this country. Look at the infrastructure. And it is proven that schools with better infrastructure have better academic performance. Queen's College is an example because that's been proven across the world. Studies have been done. The better the ambience, the better the environment of the school, the better becomes the student performance. It is a proven fact. You can't fight that. So it's obvious then that they don't want their children to perform at the level that they should. That's why the schools do the way they do.
But Nigel and Paul, could we talk about operator? You're going to show us what's happening there with Tuka. If you can put those two pictures side by side so that we can have some comments on these two schools.
Yes.
We're gonna get those pictures. We're gonna get those pictures there. He's gonna put up those pictures so that we can talk about what's happening at these two schools. Because since you spoke about the school and the environment, how conducive it is, I want us to just zero in a little on this one here while the operator is getting it. But while the operator is getting that, I noticed we have I think it was yesterday, we saw, and this is coming off of school, but it will come right back to school just now. We have seen police vehicles. All right, let's look at what's happening in this. Okay, good. The operator is saying, let me go. We've seen our police vehicle. They have the insignia there, or the emblem they have on the police vehicle. And then at the bottom there, rather than us seeing police, we are seeing policia. Your thoughts while we get those pictures together?
I think it's borderline treasonous because policia is a Spanish term and Venezuela is our adversary. Venezuela is seeking to have this country as especially the leader. The argument that's raised is just silly because context clues and certain words in linguistics, and I've learned this in studying and so on, that you can, certain words internationally, you can see them you don't have to know the language because they're so familiar, like policia, police. From time to time, she's police and okay then, this is what it is. And the argument that the police force want to cater to the Spanish-speaking population doesn't make any sense either because in Venezuela, they taught Spanish from grade 1, from the age of 5, all the way up to adulthood in university. So you can't tell me that they taught English as a matter of fact. If you taught English from age of 5 years old, how do you come to Guyana and have to see police here to relate to it? Even worse is the fact that the police force have said they'll have this label as policia on the police vehicles, and now they'll try to teach the police officers Spanish. Now, I don't know. I mean, I can't expect better from making these people, but at this stage, at least somebody could have said, please, teach them Spanish first. I want you to teach them Spanish, you don't have to have police in the vehicle either. But you're labeling the thing as though you speak Spanish. And then somebody comes to you and says, well, listen, ¿cómo estás? What you say? What are you talking about?
But Nigel, and Paul is going to come in here too. We have seen this there. But the fact is, wherever you go across this world, from the time you see a man or a woman dressed in a particular uniform, you can already identify with them. And more so since Guyana is an English-speaking country, and like you said, Apostle, Venezuela is our adversary. As a matter of fact, today, I saw the president responding to a threat.
Correct.
So how is it that we want to facilitate all these kinds of things? And then just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, we heard a big announcement from His Excellency. I noticed my viewers are saying, stop referring to them as honorable, stop referring to them as this. But we have to at some point give them that. I saw the president, or I heard the president saying Spanish will now be compulsory in all schools. Now, Nigel, you said it correct. We ain't do no training, but we put it on vehicles and we teaching in schools. Now, I remember when my days in school when we had tape recorders. Because I keep saying to folks, Spanish is not a subject that you can write on the chalkboard and the children copy.
No.
It's a practical subject. It's very
Exactly.
interactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Paul, share with us so our viewers will understand this whole craziness about teaching Spanish in school. Somebody just wake up one morning, we're teaching Spanish in school now. Spanish is compulsory.
Well, I happened to have met and known the mother of broadcast to schools in Guyana, one Celeste Dolphin. And Celeste Dolphin coined a word to describe such behavior. And she would say that is jackassery. Now, I mean, I saw what was said on Gordon Mosley's post there when you had it projected. And the police are saying that they're catering to all Guyanese citizens. Now, Guyanese, in the last line of the first paragraph, they're trying to provide an efficient and broad-based service to all Guyanese. But the Guyanese people are English, they're not Spanish. So I don't know how you could be serving the Guyanese, the English Guyanese, by putting the signs in Spanish. And like you said, Venezuela has just laid claim to Guyana. So it's a real slap in the face to be serving, projecting the Venezuelan tongue on the Guyanese people at a time like this. And more than that, Guyanese, the police have got to first master the English language. You can try to teach them Spanish. When you look at the station diary and see the quality of some of the statements that some of them write. Now, I'm not speaking about all nor the majority of policemen in Guyana, but because of the salaries that policemen are paid, the profession does not attract the best academics. And like I said, you look at the quality of the reports written at some stations and the trouble they have at writing English. You're going to try to compel them to learn Spanish. And it's the same thing at the CXE level. We were talking about this just a while ago, that we concentrate on the high flyers, all the 23, 24 subjects and all of that. And we don't stop to look at our national pass rate. Okay? We look at the high flyers, but we don't stop and realize, wait a minute, the overwhelming majority of children in Guyana, the national pass rate in language and mathematics is not as high as we think. And there are efforts that have got to be made to shore that up first before we start to insist on proficiency in another language. Not saying that, we must learn Spanish. We must know the language of our neighbors so that we know what they're saying to us. But there are other things that need fixing, like the fact that these days, ever since there was the secondary school reform project with, I think it was Dr. Hunt, 2 decades ago, we seem to think that everybody has got to be a scholar and an academic. And so we cut out the community high schools to make every secondary school a secondary school. And so you're forcing everybody into the academic arena when there are persons who have other inclinations and skills that we don't cater to when we just make a lopsided education system that is only concerned about academic achievements. And when we do that, we frustrate some students, and then we lose very good and useful citizens who could excel in other areas. And so, and because we end up frustrating some of them, we end up destroying them because they end up coming out of school without subjects and without a skill either. So, there are all kinds of things that could be done differently, and it's not rocket science. You can consult the educators and they will tell you. But the point is, I believe that there is no consultation. People just do and then think after. No thought goes into anything.
Well, I'm happy, Paul. We had a little sidebar with this, with a little Spanish on the police vehicle. But I'm happy that you came on. You spoke about the schools that we're having, junior, secondary. All our schools have now been named. Most of our schools, community high schools, have now been brought on board, and so they're junior secondary schools. Nigel, you were going to tap in on this one. When we moved our schools from community high, when we canceled all our community high schools and our primary tops, and we made them junior secondary schools, was this a good move or not? Nigel?
Thank you. It would have been a good move for some people. And as Paul has said, it would have been a disaster for others. The idea and the concept about just transitioning from a community high to or primary top to now having the average school being labeled secondary school should have had with it provision made to accommodate the students who are not, as they say, academically inclined. I don't understand what the term means in some cases, because it's just what you get them to do. Because if you have more tech vocals and so on being offered and you build that environment for them, then they would be inclined to do it because it's what they're skilled at, the tactile learners as they call. But if you just transition away from those environments where they learn skills and these different things in reference to trades, and put them in a classroom where they're now stuck on textbooks, then you fail the child. So I wouldn't say that altogether the move was bad. What was bad was what was lacking in reference to preparation for these children. And also, I should even say for some teachers, because we still have to understand that for our children to develop in certain areas, they have to have the necessary instruction from those who are capable of giving it to them. Mm-hmm. So they should be great to focus on how do we have teachers that are skilled enough to handle the children who would have come from the primary top, from the community high schools. How do we transition them to an environment whereby they're technically savvy, they want to learn certain things, trades with their hands? Do we have the means in every environment to accommodate that? Or special schools? Again, I go back to Burnham's vision. Build environment for the child to thrive in based on your national vision. If we want to produce students who are capable of functioning in a high-tech society, then build schools to facilitate that. And it wouldn't just be books all the time. So I would not say that it was a bad move altogether. It was just preparation was poor.
Well, Nigel, I would want to say that, and I may be wrong, but I'm holding on to this. The move to transition or to transform all schools and make them junior secondary schools where all the students have to write CXC, in my mind, was a bad move. Because there was no thought process into doing that. And again, we go back again to what we've been talking about. When you do these things, it's corruption and more corruption and more corruption, and a way of getting people to be able to sign off monies for themselves. And that's why we do these things. Because when we, Paul touched on it just now, if we look at the dropout rates we are having in our secondary schools, in our primary schools, we hear every year, 15,000, 13,000. How many thousands are writing the
Mm-hmm.
grade 6 exams?
Right.
And when we go, by the time 5 years later, we're hearing 5,000 are writing CSEC, 8,000 are writing CSEC.
Where are they?
And nobody is asking where are the others? Nobody is asking. And then when we have the passes, we're hearing, about the top 10 and the top 100. What happened to the last 1,000? Nobody is hearing about that. And so, again, we know that all of us are not made the same. So some of us can use our hands well, and some of us can use our brains and write on paper. But this system doesn't cater for us. Hence,
No.
the reason for us having the problems that we're having in schools. Just last week, I think it was, or maybe sometime, yes, last week, we saw the fights again. We saw a young man there stamping another one in his head.
Yeah.
We saw a young lady bullying and hitting away on another one.
Yeah.
And we have all of these issues in our schools because, one, we are frustrating the children. Two, we are frustrating our teachers. Three, we don't have the system in place to deal with our children. We got a section called the welfare. I'm not sure how well they are to fare, but we have a welfare section in our education department. And I feel sorry for those people because they are not fully equipped to deal with the issues that we're having in schools. We have our students, and I'm not saying that our students are the only students, but we have our students smoking marijuana in school. They're selling marijuana in school. They're selling all kind of Mali and all kind of thing they're selling in schools. They're misbehaving in schools. They're threatening their teachers. They're assaulting teachers. They're assaulting their peers. And what do? We don't deal with these issues, but we find the Minister of Education and some of her officers, they jump at little insignificant things. They jump at, a teacher doesn't have notes of lessons completed for the day, and you write up the teacher. A teacher come in, and mind you, we're not promoting I'm not promoting lateness, and I'm not promoting teachers promoting that teachers should not have their work or that teachers must have their work. We are promoting, as a matter of fact, that teachers must have their work. They must be prepared for school. But for these little petty things, you hear the big noise about them. For little petty things like a teacher sending a child out of a class, we're hearing big noise about them. But they are not putting these systems in place to deal with these issues. Your comments, Paul and Nigel.
Now, first thing, if the no, well, let me go back a little bit to the community high school model. The beautiful thing is that some children are not good test takers, which is why at common entrance they might have had a bad day. And it's not that they don't know their work. Under pressure, they just don't focus and can't produce. Which is why in the community high school system, there was a way of tracking the students' performance for the first 3 years. And provided there is consistent improvement, then that same child would be allowed to go to a regular secondary school in third form. So it isn't as if persons who had a bad day were discarded. That's the very first thing. And if you couldn't get enough of a grade to get you into the regular secondary school system, there was the technical area that you could go to, GTI or GTIC or whatever it was called, right? And so there was always an avenue into which to channel the student. That's the very first thing. As regards the lack of social skills, one of the things that I took away from, you talk about Friday afternoon was half day. What I remember well is on Friday afternoons, we would sit and sing national songs for the 2 hours in the afternoon. And the one thing that those national songs taught you, well, The main thing was love of country and love of your fellow citizen. And I am certain that the intrinsic value of knowing how to treat your neighbor, your fellow countryman, and love for your country taught you that you don't kick and stomp another person because it's your fellow Guyanese.
Mm-hmm.
All of us have a country to build. You know, the message behind the music, it wasn't just the singing, it's what you left believing. You know, you had a certain high-mindedness about what it meant to be Guyanese and the kinds of behavior that was idealized in these songs, right? We, each of us, may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be. You know, there was this sense of ambition. You know, you must cooperate. I want to serve my country. You know, oh, I love my country, Guyana. You know, glad that I was born in Guyana. And, you know, if children were still singing and believing and thinking those things, their behavior would be different. You know, so it's the intrinsic curriculum that is missing. All we care about is the extrinsic. We don't, you know, we don't realize that there was more to to singing than just singing. It was conditioning. It was calming the savage beasts, according to Shakespeare, right? He said that music had the power to calm the savage beast, you know, and that is true today. I mean, I'm not calling anybody's child a savage beast, but the point is that the soft skills condition the human being, and that is the purpose of non-academic subjects in the curriculum, which, like we said, there's no room for. You do PE, you learn discipline. You have to listen to the coach. You have to stand up and not fidget because we're focusing here. You know, same thing if you're singing in a choir. You got 300 children in the choir, or 60 or 80. There's one teacher standing in front, and when the teacher is there, there's no fidgeting and there's no talking. Again, you're teaching respect for authority inadvertently through the exercise of singing. You know, you get to learn that when an adult is in front, you stand up and be quiet. You know, all of those things affect behavior in society. You know, you know, so we're robbing the children of so many life skills by not diversifying the curriculum.
Thanks, Paul. We have a call on the line. Let me just take this caller before we bring Nigel in. Caller, good night to you. Thanks for calling.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My take on this whole situation when it comes to the level of which our educational system has dropped to, it has to do with the poverty level in Guyana. If you have 51% of the people living under the poverty margin, what do you expect? Pressure is on the parents, pressure is on the teachers, pressure in all areas and directions. Those who have the money, they can afford to send their children to private schools and they can get some sort of results. And even if you look at the children that goes to Saints, those that goes to QC, Bishop, all the high schools, all the top schools in the country, if you check their parents, you will see their parents are the reasonably well off because they can afford it. Now, if you have a country where people are promoting poverty by not paying attention to their citizens, you cannot expect better. This thing has to be addressed from that level. Because if you want the country to move forward, you have to think about education on a holistic level. You can't just look at the school systems alone. And I am a builder. I want to keep up when building the first see which direction the wind is coming from, because you have to arrange the building in such a way that the building is cool because this is a climatic. Climatic condition in Guyana is a hot one. Now, when you have these, I don't know what you call them. I don't call them contractors. I don't call them builders. They're nothing else but robbers. When you have these robbers taking on these tasks of building this building, there's nothing expected more than the inadequacy that is produced. These people are destroying this nation, and it is a sad situation. It is a very, very, very sad situation. And I think to myself that if we really, really, really want to do something about this, we have to look no further than ourselves right here in Guyana. We have to look to each other, come up with a real plan, rather than running to the white man for all of our help that we have right here. That is what I think personally, and that is my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling. Good night. Nigel, we take you. I don't know if you want to respond to the caller first or you're going to say what you have to say.
I'll speak to the matter because it's so important when you spoke to what's happening in our schools now, and I become, to some teachers, an enemy of theirs, but that's all right. I recall during my years of being a student that I've never, ever, ever been to a party where I saw one of my teachers. Never. I've never been to anywhere where I saw my teacher bend over and broke off your back, broke up this stinky leg, anything. I have never seen a teacher of mine drunk at the road corner, especially females. There was a particular decorum about them. And the way they conducted themselves, even the men, made me realize that I couldn't behave in a particular manner because I couldn't say to them, but I saw you last night. Even we had school fairs that we had, and we had disco. You didn't see the teachers in the disco with us doing anything funny. They were the policemen. They let us do the dancing. And that's one thing we have to pay attention to. How do our teachers conduct themselves now in this society in the eyes of our children? And we have social media platforms. They can see things. But also, what is being done in reference to the economic well-being of our teachers? That's another thing. What are we attracting? How can you tell me that this country is so wealthy and look at what our teachers are earning? When a teacher retires, you are confining them to poverty. If someone never makes it to the status of a principal of a school and they leave as a qualified master or trained teacher, what would their pension be like? Are we considering, and I'm happy the caller spoke to that because it's urgent to what I have to say, are we considering the economic framework in reference to what the teachers have to face on a daily basis? What are we doing in reference to them? And when I traveled and began to teach overseas, I realized then that this was crazy. I was earning in another country, sometimes close to 200, 300,000 or more dollars per month, with my rent being paid, by the way. I didn't have to pay rent. So rent was fully paid for me. And I was still earning $500,000 Ghana per month. Look at what we have here now in this country. Which teacher can tell me that at their level, they're earning $500,000 per month and their rent is being paid for? So the issues we have in our country has a lot to do with how we're treating our teachers. If a teacher is sick today, can we tell any one of these teachers in our school system that they can afford to go to Balwansing? Ali's wife went to a hospital private hospital to make her baby. Can any teacher in our school system say that they can genuinely, honestly, without lessons and all the exorbitant fees on their salary alone, can they afford health care? Can they afford an annual checkup? So there are many factors that will cause now us to attract a particular quality of people, and then for certain teachers to say, well, you're not paying me, so I must go and police children. Why should I pay attention to how children are behaving? Why should I invest so much of myself into these children if I know that should one of them hit me in the head with a stick, I don't even have any benefit from the Ministry of Education? So it is far-reaching. It is far-reaching when you do not take care of your teachers, as I'm saying here. I also would like to suggest, why should a teacher not have duty-free concession? Why not? What disqualifies them? When they are molding the nation, so that's how you treat people who mold your nation, that they're not qualified to have certain basic benefits. We would only attract to the system that which they think about themselves as being, okay, I can be in here because that's all I can do at the moment. But if I have a better option, I'm gone. And that's exactly what happened in 2090s and so on. If you said there's a better option for me, I'm leaving. But before that, I remember at Mackenzie High School where I was a student, the Bauxite Company used to subsidize the teacher's salary. So everyone wanted to teach at Mackenzie High School and Watukude School because those two teachers were the highest paid in Guyana. And what did they produce? Me.
Right.
So we have to appreciate the fact that if you handle them well enough, you get the best out of them. If you treat them as if they don't matter, by right, they should tell you, well, if I don't matter, then what else should I do?
Well, we spoke about what is happening in terms of the students, and I wanted us to conclude on that before we talked about the teachers, but then you brought up the teachers. But I was looking at I don't know, operator, could you put that picture up there for the two pictures, and then we look at the other ones with the printing. We have to talk about this printing of these exercise books and these textbooks, because it's not resting well with me, and it's not the first time we're having it under the PPP government. It's not the first time we're having it. So the whole thing about education is a complete package, and so it deals with the learners, it deals with the practitioners who are the teachers, it deals with the buildings that we call schools, it deals with the parents and other major stakeholders. So it's a complete package, not that one, the classrooms. So it's a complete package. And let me take this word from the president. It's a comprehensive package. So we can't deal with one aspect and don't deal with the other, or deal with three aspects and we don't deal with the other. Right. It's like your body. If you cut your finger, then the entire body doesn't function properly because it feels it. And I don't know why the folks in the PPP feel that they can consult with the teachers and not consult with their union. Right. I don't know why they feel that they can build tall buildings and don't put proper furniture in the buildings, don't have proper textbooks there, don't pay teachers well, and everything is going to be merry and nice. But I want us to look at these two classrooms that we are having. We have here Watukude Primary School, and we have Nations. Mind you, and Nigel, you would know this, and Paul, you would know that we don't have a problem with where anybody wants to send their child. But let me say this. If I am the Minister of Education, my child must be in the public schools.
Correct.
Because I am promoting public education. And if I am promoting public education and my children going somewhere else, I am saying to the nation, I have no faith in the public system. Correct. So the president is here, but this is where our children at Watukude Primary, these are the furniture that they have to sit on. Operator, I don't know if you can bring that up a little more for us. This is where our children have to sit. But this is where another set of children are sitting. And we talk about one Guyana. We're talking about one Guyana. You see the toys that they have to play with. I wonder if Watukude Primary got those same toys. And so we'll take our comments. We'll comment take our comments on this, Nigel and Paul.
But I would have taken these images. And the grade 3 furnace is my son's classroom, so I can speak firsthand. And I'm also the chairman of the PTA, and so I can speak firsthand. I also taught the School of the Nations for a while, so I can surely speak firsthand. And you see, there's an air conditioning unit in Finale's son's classroom, and I don't care whose son it is in that classroom. But look at Watukude Primary School, the public school. What impression must my child have when, as his father, this is where I take him every day? Look at where he's sitting. When he sees something like this, what does it tell us about the president's mind towards my child? Yep. In an oil-rich economy. Now we have the roundabout with the spotless Jaguar. $61 million. Ali's boasting all the time about infrastructure. That could have purchased 500 air conditioning units for schools across Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley Singh went to Parliament, and
Mm-hmm.
they're hitting the trillion, 1 point something trillion dollar mark by the end of this year because he's going back for more money again. Jagdi
Mm-hmm.
will say, but
Yes,
they cannot for one day
come
say,
October. Mm-hmm.
they can't say that they're going to come into this to equip every school with, because they don't, GPL can't even function if you do that. But at the end of the day, tell us that you're serious about our children. The yellow furniture you see here, the teachers have to paint this.
Yeah.
The blue wall is because that building was infested with mold. I'm telling from first-hand experience here. It was infested with mold. They came and cleaned it, say, okay, then paint it, and they painted it blue. And they painted the ceiling black. Look at the other classroom. This doesn't lend itself to our children in the public school.
Well lit.
Come on. Look at the public school. Look at the private school. And by the way, they said with Tukaday School Primary School, the Tukaday Primary School NGSA results would have plummeted this year. Why? I made the point already. What environment do you have the children in? Look at this. We expect them to do.
And so we preach. This is the one Guyana that is being preached. One
Yes.
Guyana.
One
Paul,
Guyana.
your take. One Guyana.
Well, in the first place, the colors that you put in a room affect mood, believe it or not. And in addition to mood, it affects the kind of lighting you have in the building. And I don't know who in their right mind would paint a roof black to give what kind of light in the room. That's the very first thing. The second thing is you can tell that the classroom there in that Watuka classroom is not divided by walls, which we were talking about earlier, where there's competing sound, whereas the other classroom is well walled off and sealed off. And so right away, you have clear contrast and an environment that is not conducive to comfortable learning. And I mean, the previous speaker and yourself talked about the teachers, and that brings me to the point where people have got to learn that the school, the institution, is not the building. It's the people in there who make the wheels turn. And if the human beings that operate the machine, the school, are not happy and not content, they can't give of their best, right? In addition, if you're going to ask teachers to give their pound of flesh, but they've got to divide their energies because they need a second job after school to be able to put food on the table, to make ends meet. These teachers can't have their notes ready and prepared. They can't have the energy that they need to give to the children if they got to be working after school. The other thing is that instead of staying back after school to help a child, which was commonplace when I was a student, they can't because they got lessons to teach or the second job to go to. And so when you put people in survival mode, while it looks like everything is functioning well, there are all kinds of cracks and compromises. The system is compromised without us even realizing that it is apparent until it is too late and we see manifest themselves in the result that we get at the end. And that is my take on it.
But you know what? I want our operator to pull this other set of pictures up there. I mean, we education again is a package. And if we're going to do foolishness and instill in our students wrong concepts, then when they get older, you can't erase it. Now, here is it. We have the printing of these exercise books that Priya Manik Chan, she's been boasting about on her Facebook page and on the Ministry of Education's Facebook page. Operative, you can pull that closer for us. Multiplication tables that we've learned in schools. Now we are learning as adults that 3 12s are 26. 8 12s are 95. You know? So it means that you, Paul, Nigel, myself, and all the other seniors, we have to go and redo all that we would have learned because maybe we were taught the wrong concept.
Well,
Before you go there, look again. Some of our natural resources of Guyana: forest, sugar, rice, fish, minerals, petroleum. Oh man, come on. Look again. Some facts about Guyana. Number 2, Guyana is the only English-speaking county in South America. You know, there was another one which talks about the highest mountain. Mount Roraima is the highest mountain in Guyana. What we doing to our children? Are we setting up our children to fail? Are we doing this intentionally? Because this is not the first. We had a whole load of nursery school, what they call the big books. That whole production had to be pulled and billions of dollars were spent. Up to a day like today, I've not heard of the education officer, the proofreader, the producer, the nobody who signed on to the contract. I've not heard of any of them being disciplined. You know? And this is what we're faced with. And then, hold on. And now we want to talk about bringing Spanish into the schools when we can't get simple English right. What are we really doing?
Yeah. Kaito Falls is not the largest one-drop fall. It's the highest single drop fall. It's not the largest.
And, you know, I don't know. Well, no proofreading is done, obviously, because if proofreading was done, that bit of, again, to use Celeste Dolphin's word, that bit of jackassery would not have slipped, right? The second thing I wanted to say is, do these people who even come up with these facts have any knowledge or sense? It's just people being given money to do stupidness.
Paul, ask Priya.
No, because I'm saying you give somebody exercise books to make, and the persons who are supplying these facts clearly has no knowledge whatsoever, because they don't even know what a natural resource is. Because if you know what a natural resource is, then you'd know that rice, sugar, and fish are not natural resources, because from what I remember from primary school geography and social studies, is that a natural resource is a thing that once extracted cannot be replaced, because of course it takes so many thousands and millions of years to be formed, that there's no way that it is going to be replenished in our lifetimes, in several lifetimes. That's why it's called it's a non-renewable resource. And I don't know since when rice and sugar, which are crops that you produce, all year round, and fish, that you only need to give them a rest period so that they could rejuvenate and mate and whatever, and then you have more fish, which is, as far as I'm aware, a period of 2 to 4 weeks or something like that, for some species of fish. That's a natural resource. It's like when I went to the the consulate in Trinidad some years ago. I was waiting to get my passport renewed. And I was reading a magazine on Guyana that they had on the table in the waiting area. And when I read one little section on facts about Guyana, where it is in print that Guyana, the islands of the Essequibo River are larger than Barbados. Now I picked up the magazine and I went to the lady and I said, listen, there is no island in the Essequibo River that is larger than Barbados. And she looked at me like I am mad because, I got the accent, so I'm definitely Guyanese. But how come I am going to say that there's no island in the Essequibo that is larger than Barbados? I said, listen, when last I looked, the largest island in the Essequibo River is Hog Island, which is 66 square miles. Barbados is somewhere between 127 and 160 square miles. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
Right? So Hog Island is a third of the size of
Barbados.
Of Barbados, or half, but depending. But on which number you use, but I think it's 127. So it's about half, but it is not bigger than Barbados. And these people got this thing in magazine and print, got all the way in Guyana looking stupid, like we don't even know our own country, right? And I said, you can say that there are some islands in the Essequibo River that are larger than some Caribbean territories. And I'll agree with you there, right? Like Leguan, that is about the size of Tortola, or if not a little bigger, right? And Wakanam, that is 18 square miles, would be bigger than Tortola, right? So I'm saying the kind of idiocy that I see passing for scholarship, right? I want to know who, lets these things slip, because these things are published and they're at all the consulates in Guyana, I would assume, because if they're the one in Trinidad, I'm sure they have them elsewhere. And people would laugh us to scorn because we are obviously very ignorant. If that is what we are going to project, that is not fact.
If I may, I have the experience of working with the Science and Daily Life book theory, and I'll tell you how. If it's in it anywhere you see it, I'm one of the editors of that book. And I'll tell you what happened. I was working with the SSRP, and they were about to print the Science and Daily Life book 3. I went across to the room to check, because I was NSER doing that. But I was working the same field, and so I said, I'll go check this book they're about to print. And when I looked at it, they had a trumpet labeled as a saxophone. And I said to the gentleman, I said, you can't print this. And he said, well, we've already paid, the contract is ready, there, you have so much to be. I said, I don't mind what contract you have. You are not supposed to release to the children of Guyana misinformation or incorrect information. This is not happening. And I began to protest. So vehemently they said, okay, you get us into trouble, but let's take it to Mr. Gulsaran. And Gulsaran was shaking because he knew that all the money that was passed and people are paid hefty sums to edit this book. How did it get to that stage? We had so many errors. So Mr. Edsys, and again, I'm speaking to the quality of people we have in our education system. Would have had Mr. Edsys was the CEO then, and I was on vacation. I got a call from Mr. Edsys to say, please report to Center Ministry. I was in Linden. He said, report. When I got there, he sat to me in the office and said, listen, I was told that you discovered there were many errors in the Science and Daily Life Book 9 text before it was about to be mass printed. He said, here's the deal. I agree with you. It should not get to our children in this nation. He said, I don't mind the cost. Kindly come out of your vacation, take a break. You'll be paid for it, but go to work and ensure that this book is correct. Myself, and Melcita did that. I went there and we had to re-edit that book to perfection. because Ed Cesar, the CEO, said that he would not have that book printed as is. Priya doesn't have that interest or the means to ensure it happens. I could say this to you further. I know Glenelg has the ability to print exercise books, but as far as I'm aware, those books are printed in Trinidad. Why do we have the means in Guyana? But the contract, if you give it to Trinidadian, do you think they're going to vet our books and ensure it's okay? And the people who are in ministry now, I remember when COVID hit, when we were hit by COVID, as they said, my son, I said, okay, Priya said you all need to sit in front of the TV and learn. So I brought my child. He was about 4 years old then, or 5. I said, come, baby, watch. Let's watch something educational. And I saw the teachers on the screen saying that a worm is a vertebrate. I stopped it. I said, hold on here. No more. Cut. Because I had hell trying to tell this boy what you heard just now isn't true. He said, but teacher, I said, no, forget it. Forget that. I had to take my son and sit with him to explain in detail what vertebrates are and all the rest of it. Then I was on social media and Priya then pulled the program. And I'm happy that she did because I wasn't stopping. I said that this is ridiculous. How do you have this go to our nation's children? But that's what you have to deal with, man. So that textbook, the exercise book, and she was boasting the other day about excellence and development and the rest of it.
Yeah.
Priya, please. I have offered my services for free to these people because what we have now in the system are just people who are there grabbing money because I know how much money will be spent on these things. I've been there. I've been around NSET and everything else. Money is spent. Two places to steal the most money in Guyana is education and public works.
Yep.
That's what you get.
And that's what you get. And that's what we get. That's what we get in our roadways too. And that's why so many of our roads, by the time they're finished doing, they're sinking. But taking a closer look at education is in a mess. And unless some of us or all of us should continue to talk about this, we should call for the resignation of Priya. We should call for the resignation of some of our officers because all they are doing, they're occupying space and they're not making it right for our teachers. They're not making it right for the students or the pupils or the learners. They're not making it right. Too many mistakes we are having in the education sector. Too many things are happening and we're not getting just for dollars. We're not getting it. And so, Paul, we'll take you. I know our time is running away from us and we have to do this again because we have to continue to take a closer look at education.
You know, I have nothing against any government in Guyana, whether they are Indian or Black, PPP or PNC, so long as there are sensible people doing sensible things. And I'd like to say that under the PPP is the first time in the history of Guyana we ever had ministers of education who were not educated. And I'll say that again while your cough is knocking my sound out. It's the first time in the history of Guyana we have ministers of education who know nothing about education. They were not educators. Under the PNC, all of the education ministers were themselves educators, which is why you couldn't get past them because it was no poke. I mean, you had Dale Bisnott, who was a minister of religion. Then you had Sheikh Baksh. Now you got a lawyer who ain't got a track record as an educator. What do we expect? We have education ministers who have never been educators, and they're making policy decisions. I mean, you had the likes of Cicelyne Baird, Derek Bernard, and others, Shirley Field Ridley,
Ranjit Chandy Singh.
Yeah. You know, who were educators. All right, you had Desiree Fox, God rest her soul, who was junior minister or minister within the ministry, who was an educator, you know, but she wasn't the one making the big decisions. But you've had consistently ministers of education who know nothing about the process of learning. Do we expect something different?
Well, this is what we have. This is what we have, and this is what we've got to live with. But let me say to you, we don't have to live with this.
No.
We have to let our voices be heard. We have to highlight these defaults every time we see them, because at the end of the day, history will record us as leading our children astray. And we cannot afford to do that. Rather than investing in our human resources, we prefer to invest in tall buildings, huge buildings. Oh, we're constructing a school. It costs so much. It costs so much. Even if you have 5 learners in that school, big school you're constructing. And where we're supposed to be directing the monies to, we're not. I just saw a viewer there talking about CPC, and we're not going to touch that because that's a sore. We can't go there tonight. But CPC is in shambles. Our trainee teachers are under pressure because they continue to pay lecturers $1,000 and $1,200 to lecture the college. So if you let me say this: the PDP government, all they're interested in is quantity and not quality, because we often hear the boast about, first time ever we're going to be sending through 2,500 teachers out of the training college. 4,000 teachers have enlisted themselves. But tell me what is happening there. Absolutely zero is happening there when they go through training college. And Nigel, when we were at college, the paces we went through, the lecturers we had there, and you could always go and sit and talk to them. It's $1,200 and $1,000 they're paying these lecturers. And you know what? The qualified lecturers are leaving.
Right.
And so we prefer to gamble with competence and in experience. That's what we prefer to do. So we pull in experience and allow competence to go. The same thing is happening. I'm learning the same thing is happening at President's College, at Queen's College, where we are sending off. We have some retirees there who know the system inside out. And rather than us using these retirees to nurture young teachers, and I agree, that we must make space for younger ones, but you can't make space for younger ones at the expense of the learners.
Correct.
So quite a lot of our retirees, I'm hearing, they're being sent off from Queen's College, and you're hearing things like we have to balance the school. Too many of one race. This is nonsense, big time. And I will not sit on these. And for persons who know me, and our viewers there, they know, whichever government is there, if it's wrong, it's wrong. Right. And I'm not going to sit and polish anything because it's the coalition and it's the PPP. If it's wrong, it's absolutely wrong. At the end of the day, I don't want to have to grill up my home. I don't want to have to walk with my back tucked up under my arm. I must be comfortable when I walk these streets. But when we fail these students and they leave school, like Paul said, without a skill or without any subjects, then what you expect them to do?
We're creating a society in which we will not be able to live.
Right.
And let me say that concerning the Queen's College situation, I have been made to understand that the retired teachers are being sent off, and then teachers from Annandale are being brought and put at Queen's College to replace them. And I'm saying to myself, what nonsense is this? And they're retired teachers from Annandale, mind you. So you're moving off one set of retirees to replace them with another set, is what I'm told. I'm just hoping that that is not the truth. You know, I'm saying, what? So you're moving one set of retirees to bring another set.
We balancing it.
Yeah, bringing ethnic balance. And let me say about the ethnic balance, you know, I find it laughable that the spitefulness of some has come to backfire on them, because you and I both know that in the past, a certain group decided that they will not accept public service jobs because they pay too little. They'd rather go and either do their own business, or I don't know, through paddy or whatever, than work for the dog wages that public servants used to get. Mm-hmm. So what ended up happening was the ethnic imbalance was created then, where you got the people who are called dogs all the time doing the dog work for dog money. And now that you have plenty of them in place, you're crying about ethnic imbalance for jobs you never wanted. You know, I don't understand that. So now you're going to force and corrupt a whole system to try to force balance, to correct a problem that you created. And in the process, you know, you're compromising the whole system just because we want warm bodies of a certain type in position now. I don't know.
Well, you know, next week the following week, I'm going to get for you the senior positions and who hold these senior positions within the education sector. I'm going to publish that next week. But Nigel, I'm going to take your closing remarks. And I noticed one of our viewers saying they were embarrassed today because the president was giving a speech of his life and he was struggling to pronounce words. Well, we know that's customary, you know. It's nothing strange. The only thing is that as Guyanese, we are embarrassed as Guyanese. Nigel, we take you. Your mic, we're not hearing you.
Yes, I must say thanks to you and to Mr. Court for sharing this moment with me, and to all of those who are viewing and those who engage us this evening. I hope that you understand clearly that my position here is not one that speaks to taking a side in any shape or form. It's about speaking to that which I always speak about, which is good governance. And in this case, education. Education doesn't just speak to us being in a classroom or being given instruction from a teacher. What are you drawing out of us as individuals? And what's being pulled out of us as individuals is reflecting how we conduct ourselves based on what you have put into us. And I would like to say that to every parent in this country, let us stand resolutely to defend the best interests of our children and their teachers. If we defend the teachers and just recognize that we are on their side and we're standing for them, then I would like to think that all who govern the education sector would understand that they are people who are united for the betterment of our children. And it's time for us to, across this nation, demand that what is best for our children and for our teachers must be given to us. Again, I say to you, Ms. Coretta, thank you and do well. To Mr. Court, do well. Thanks.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you very much for the invitation as well, Coretta. And Pastor, it was great to share this time with you. And I'm going to echo his sentiments, so ditto, that, you know, it's not even having a political axe to grind. And I did make this comment earlier, that who is in government doesn't matter to me as long as sensible things are happening. And just the same way as Coretta is saying, if the coalition was in government and nonsense is happening, I'll cost them too.
Exactly.
You know, and before we go, I want to say to us that teachers are having serious issues teachers are having. As a matter of fact, the teachers union would have submitted to the PPP government in 2020 their proposal for the multi-year a multi-year proposal, which is customary. To date, it has not yet been looked at. And so teachers are still receiving $8,000 clothing allowance, which was an agreement that was signed that expired in 2018. They've not yet received a new package, but I'm hearing about this comprehensive package. And the same man who talking about the comprehensive package doesn't even know what is in the comprehensive package, because he's going out now to talk to consult with teachers. Now, if you have a package, why are you going out to consult again? So here again, the University of IFLUT, the flag flying very high. And outside of that, because of the amount of pressure that teachers are under, teachers have decided, look, we have been going for 3 years. As a matter of fact, let me say that agreement, that proposal is supposed to end in December of 2023, and it has not yet been looked at. But we are recognizing that all kinds of things are flying in the air. $4,000 and $5,000 per student, per pupil, per learner. It's given. And this is when we blast these monies all over the place, it's a way where we can pull for ourselves on the side. Because when we cater for 10,000 learners, and we know we only have 6,500 in the system, we know where the other part of the money is going. But what I found very stupid about this is that here we have a Minister of Education walking all over this country with cash monies. And they're giving these monies to head teachers. $2.5 million, $2.1 million, $3 million, 1.8. Now, just let's suppose while one of these head teacher is heading out in a taxi or something, somebody stop them, somebody collect this money, who is going to be blamed? Is it that the head teacher will have to repay this money? Because you know what you'll hear? The head teacher set it up.
Right. But what about structure? What about structure? You just dole money out, or don't people have to submit a list of needs, and based on, because every school situation is different. You'd give on a needs basis to do this thing or that thing. But you're just walking with the money and you're just saying, okay, this for you and that for you.
It's just the same way that Spanish is going to be implemented in schools. Same thing. We went to Parliament the other day, and supplementary budget, and they got more monies, and so this is the rollout.
That's how you get it.
Yes. So teachers are given cash in their hands, and they have to leave whichever point they have to assemble at, and then return to their schools with cash in their hands. Now, and these are the people who talk about because we care. If you care about head teachers, you wouldn't put them in danger. And I want to say to our head teachers, be very mindful of what you're doing. Because if those monies happen to disappear, you are going to be held accountable. I don't know why we want to put monies into our teachers' hands. Why we want to put monies in our teachers' hands? And we're talking about $4,000 and $5,000 per child. But we'll talk about that not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. We'll have to come back here, Nigel and Paul, and we have to talk some more about this. We have to talk about the Madia issue. We have to talk about the COI after you would have cleared all the debris from the site. I don't know why we're still having a COI, but this is the PPP, and they feel that they can always spray smoke screen out there and come and put it in front of everybody's face, and people don't understand the game that they are playing. Now, we're not finished with that Spanish thing, because we got to talk about that again. But viewers, I want to thank you so much for being here with us. You make our program interesting. Nigel and Paul, thank you so much for being here with us. I'll see you again here on this stage in 2 weeks' time, because we have to talk some more about education, because without an educated nation, we know what will happen. And we're seeing it every day. The murders, the cars that are being driven on the road, the way the minibuses are driving on the road, the way our pedestrians are walking the streets, we are seeing the amount of accidents we're having. And of course, we have to talk about all these schools where you're having fire at all of these schools. And there's no one that is being held, and you can't hear about the report and all of that. So viewers, thank you once again for being here with us. Be very careful when you walk the streets. I know your water is a problem, on and off of water flow. I know the electricity is another problem, and then you have to pay huge bills at the end of the month. But thank you so much for being here with us. Continue to be good Guyanese citizens, and let's speak out against these ills, because we're not only speaking for what's happening now, but we are paving a way for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. So take care of yourselves, and God bless you. Have a good night.